We are recording. Welcome to this afternoon session, the ECF 471 overview for first-time applicants in preparation for Window 3, which opens on April the 28th. This is your North Carolina E-rate team, Roxy, Adam, Jill, and Susan, who will be training you this afternoon. And we appreciate those of you who are joining us and are excited for you to file for things you need for your teachers and your students. So I'll begin with first few slides. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. Instead of telling you where the restrooms are, since we're virtual, I will tell you that we will be doing questions and answers. And if you will, post all of your questions in the chat window, and please post to all participants. We'll collect any questions that you have, and when we get through with our content slides, we will answer all of your questions and go through those at the end. So make sure you please post those to all participants. All right, slide number 2. The first thing you need to know are important dates for Window 3. This is a very short application window. It's only open for 15 days. It opens on Thursday, this Thursday, April the 28th, and closes on Friday, May 13th. There will be no out-of-window filing. So if you do not get your application in by May 13th, then you are out of luck. Of note, some things you need to make sure you are aware of. That funding is not guaranteed in Window 3. There is about $1 billion left, and if funding exceeds that $1 billion, then applications will be prioritized by the C1 discount amount. So we've been told to tell you guys not to rely on this funding source if you have other funds. So meaning if you have local funds that need to be spent, spend them on these items that you think you're going to use ECF for. Especially if you are like a 40% district or charter, you may not get this money. Because if, like I said, if demand exceeds $1 billion, they're going to start with the poor districts and charters, and then they're going to bump 5% to the rural districts and charters and fund those first. Secondly, ECF is not meant to fund a one-to-one initiative. Yes, if you have devices for every one of your children and you have Google Chromebooks that are going out of use, your licenses are expiring at the end of this school year, and you need to have those replaced, those are the devices you send home with your children and you use them at school, by all means, this is a fund that can help you with that. But it's not meant for you to put devices in carts for a one-to-one and leave them in your school. The whole purpose of ECF funds is for remote learning and closing the homework gap. These devices must go home with your children. Funding caps, and these have been the same throughout all 3 waves of ECF. $400 per device for your laptops or Chromebooks or iPads, what have you. $250 per hotspot. And there is no cap for service for your hotspots, but you need to be cautious with the pricing, because if the reviewers think the pricing is a little out of hand, they're going to ask you about it. So most services about $15, $20, $25 per hotspot. Granted, when we get up in the mountains per se, it's a little harder to get service and it's a little more expensive in some areas. So be cautious with your pricing for service, because it needs to be pretty much about what everybody else's is. So those are some items that you need to keep in your mind when you're applying for what you need for your students and your teachers. Okay, next, application information.
Okay, application information. So what do I need before I file? Answers to the unmet need questions. And we're going to go through those in just a couple of minutes, but you need to have these questions answered and ready to fill in. You can always refer back to this slide deck so you can prepare for your questions. They're not difficult, but they're very specific, so you will need to know exactly how to answer these. A quote for each product or service that you're wanting to apply for. So if you are getting Chromebooks, you need to have a quote that is set, and for Chromebooks especially, you need to have your Google license bundled in with the quote, and then the quote and the invoice must match. If you send in a quote that has the licensing in there, then you're more than likely going to be approved with that. But if you include them separately, there's a good chance they're not going to give you the license with the Chromebook. And we all know you need the license for the Chromebooks to work. Extras aren't eligible, such as cases. You know, they're wonderful to have, especially with elementary kids if they break them or drop them, but they are not covered. iPad pencils, insurance, things like that are not eligible. If your vendor is going to do SPI billing for you, you need to get the SPI agreement form. And you also need to be set up in sam.gov. Sam.gov is a registration service, and it is how the money will be sent to your school. Okay, and they have changed some things up, and now you have a UEI number, and you need to make sure that all this information is correct and matches. Next. Okay, how to access the ECF 471. You are used to doing this. It's really easy. You're going to log into your Epic account just like you normally do. And when you do, you're going to see probably the three options that you have over here on the right-hand side. Most of you will have that middle one with the bear, but I'm sure there's a few schools out there that do not have that. But you're going to choose the bottom one, Emergency Connectivity Fund, and you're going to click on that, and it's going to take you to the next screen, and you're going to see a dashboard, and from that dashboard you're going to choose the File FCC Form 471, which is located in the bottom right. And you're just going to click on that, and then you will be going to the next screen. There we go. All right, so first thing it's going to ask is for an application nickname. You guys are used to that. Put in your put in your school name, maybe funding year 23, ECF, third window. Make it where it's going to be very easy to identify who you are and what you have going on with this. So the nicknames are very important. Your contact information. If you're the main contact, of course, you're going to click yes. And we know we have summer coming up, and many of you do work 12 months and can be contacted at the school, but sometimes I hope you go on vacation, but there may be some additional information you need to add. So, of course, you're just going to add your holiday and summer contact information if it is needed there. So as you can see, this is super similar to how you start your other F471, and you hit save and continue, and then you'll move on. Information for unmet student needs. So this is a really important part here. Based on whatever information you have available to you, please provide your best estimates. Okay? So you don't want to put some random number, but you do want to have a solid estimate of what you're going to need. So in the first set of questions, it says, at the start of the pandemic, how many students in your school or school district lacked access to? And you need to read these carefully so you can understand them. The first one is a connected device that was sufficient to engage in remote learning. Okay, so you may have maybe 100 kids that did not have a device that would work for remote learning. The next section is a broadband connection that was sufficient to engage in remote learning. So this is how many students did not have any internet connection at home and couldn't work from home with the remote learning. When you get to the next piece, it says both a connected device and a broadband connection that were sufficient to engage in remote learning. So this number is going to be different than your other two numbers because you're looking for a student that has both these issues. You're not counting them in the first box or the second box. So this is a totally separate number here for kids who didn't have a connection or a device. Set number 2.
I'm sorry,
oh,
if
go
I
ahead.
can interrupt Jill for just a minute. She hit the nail on the head with that one about the third box there and not counting them in box 1 or box 2. So one of the biggest problems we ran into when we were helping folks with window 1 and window 2, especially window 1, is they didn't know how to count their kids and didn't know how to fill in these boxes when it got to box 3. If you put a kid in box 1 that didn't have a device, they don't go in box 3. So, you know, normally if a kid doesn't have a laptop, they're going to go either in box 1 or box 3, but you're not going to put them in both. So if you have to hand a kid a Chromebook, and then you're going to have to give him a hotspot to go home, you're going to put him in box 3. But you're not going to count him in box 1 and box 2 and box 3. So make sure you're not double counting these children, because that's one of the first questions you're going to get asked in PIA about your application is your numbers. And if you order 300 devices, but you said you needed 700 according to your numbers, you're like, well, I didn't add them right. And that's just going to take time away from you getting funded. It's not that you intentionally did anything wrong. They just want to know why your numbers don't match. So make sure you're very careful, and we will be more than happy to help you walk through these numbers. Very, very, very careful in how you count these kids. Okay? Sorry, Sue.
Oh, thank you. No, great clarification. All right, so set number 2 of questions is very similar, but they are asking you to look at the school year of 2020 and 2021. And you're going to look at how many students in your school or school district did you provide the connected device. So how many students did you give a connected device to that did not have one? The second part is a broadband connection. So how many students did you send hotspots home with back in 2020 and 2021? And then the third box, of course, both a connected device and the broadband connection. So are you sending home the hotspot and the device? And so you're counting, looking back at 2020 and 2021, that school year, and how many students were you serving there with these? And again, all your numbers are going to be different, and you're not going to count the students in number 3 if they just only needed a device. If they just needed a device, they're in box 1. If they needed both, they're going to be in box 3. But you're not counting these students twice. Okay? All right, step 3. With the funding you are requesting from the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, how many students in your school or school district will you provide So how many students are you going to serve this coming up year? How many students are you going to hand out a connected device to? This is going to go back to what you had before with how many students have a need. So how many devices will you be giving out to the students? How many broadband connections are you going to be giving out to the students? And these are students that may have a device, or they have a device but they don't have a connection at home that they can use. And then your third bullet again, how many of these students are you going to hand out a connected device and a broadband connection to, so they can take it home and they can use the hotspot at home and get served?
If I may, just as we're not sure, this set 3 was originally designed to be addressing school year, funding year 21. So for any students from July of 2021 through June of 2022, that you would, with the ECF Windows 1 and 2 would have been providing with this equipment. This question may be changed on the new 471. They haven't released it yet. However, it may stay the same. So this might look more like the question set that was in set 2, with actually showing a funding year in this section. So like during the 21-22 school year, how many devices did you give out? Because this is all about, would be then addressing ECF Windows 1 and 2. So if for schools that did apply through those 2 windows, 4 devices for their students, how much did they give out at that time? We don't know if the form will be changed or not, but just to give you guys a heads up with that.
All right, thank you. And set number 4, even after you receive this funding, even after you receive this funding, you are requesting, are you going to have students in your school or school district that are still going to need a connected device? So how many of those students will not be serviced yet even after you apply for this? How many students are you going to have that still need a broadband connection? And then on the bottom one, the last bullet, how many students are you going to have that's going to need a connected device? I'm really bad at that. A connected device and a broadband connection. So, and all of this has to do with remote learning. I think that Roxy said earlier, this is not to be putting in carts to roll around the school. This is for your students to be taken home and being able to engage in the learning. Okay, next. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to be taking over from Jill. Thank you, Jill. So
Nope. We skipped some pages. Go back.
Wait a minute.
Skip one more.
Go back one more.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, guys.
Nope.
There we go.
Yeah, this kind of is important because this can address needs of your teachers.
My mouse is a happy mouse. It is a jumpy happy mouse today.
It's all good.
Oh, so sorry, everyone. So sorry.
Back to Jill.
Can you tell it's tired of ECF already? My mouse is? Sorry, Jill.
But it's doing a great job. Skipping right on through and ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Okay. Collecting the data that you need in order to fill out these unmet need questions. How are you going to collect this data? What did you do? How did you do it? There are different ways to get it. You can send surveys home. You can make phone calls, and hopefully the parents will be able to answer your call and say, no, we don't have a broadband connection, or yes, we do, but I don't have a device. Another way would be an online form, which if they do not have a device and do not have broadband would be a little bit difficult, but the parents could come into the school and fill one out there. So there's a couple different ways you can get your data, and just make sure that you are holding on to this. You need to keep very detailed information because chances are it's going to be asked for. They're going to want to know how you got it, when you got it, who did you talk to, and then you need to have all this documentation ready to upload and send to them.
Jill, also, this is the area where if you have teachers that are actively engaged in the remote learning process who may need equipment because theirs is no longer sufficient for remote learning, that you would document that. Your teachers are not included in your student unmet need, but you could put in this narrative. At this time, we have 14 teachers whose laptops are older than, and your IT people know what older than means, if it's 5 years, if it's 6 years, you know, however, whichever, that you're seeking to purchase equipment for within this funding as well. This is the only spot where you really have to explain that you're looking for some equipment for them.
Exactly. You also
Great
can use your
information.
inventories. You know, you keep your up-to-date inventories, and you know if you have 200 Chromebooks, those licenses expire. And so that's, you know, especially if you have devices for every child in your school that goes home, and you know on June 30th, licenses expire on 230 of them. Well, that's your inventory, that's your data. You've got data from your management system that you can upload to cover that end of it. For needs for hotspots, you might be able to use some of your free and reduced lunch data in terms of needs there. You know, I've heard some states have used some of that, especially when you can't get surveys answered. I know some schools at the beginning of the year, that's one of the things when they send out their enrollment stuff, you know, we're updating our records. I know I answer it every year. I used to when my kids were in K-12. Do you have internet service at home? Check. What's your address? What's your phone number? You know, it's just one of those standard questions you get asked every year. So it's somewhere in Power School. Maybe that's something your district asks and you just might not know it. So anyway, just some ideas for how to gather up some data. And I know we have a library on the call. Library, you do not have a set of needs questions. Yours runs a little bit differently, and you have to have your folks sign a piece of paper when they check out. We can talk about yours offline if you want to for ECF, but yours runs just a little bit differently. But you don't have to prove need for your patrons. Okay, I'm sorry. Do I have to click again?
You have to click again, and it's, well.
But I just like to say one thing. Don't be scared off by what we're telling you. It sounds like, oh my God, the Gestapo is going to come because I asked for 50 devices and I only needed 48. That's fine. You just ask for 50 if you think you might only need 48. Don't ask for 50 if you think you might need 55, because you're not going to get extra. You don't have to, at the end of the day, buy the 50 devices. You can just buy 48 and say, thank you very much. Here's the other 2 by X back, you know, to your bank account. Thank you.
Exactly. And we have had very successful districts get millions and millions of dollars in Windows 1 and 2. Get the things they need for their kids and teachers. So don't be scared off. Is it time for me to?
It is time for Adam now.
All right. All right, so you've gone through, you've done your unmet need questions, and if you're a little familiar with E-rate, the process is somewhat similar. So you're going to fill out your 471 form to add your funding requests. And so step 1 is, here's your new form. You've got it started, you've named it, something awesome. Now you're going to click on Add FRN, which is funding request number. So you're going to do basically your line here, and again, you have to name it again. So this is where you get a little bit more specific, because for each, if you've got, say, staff computers that are Dells, you've got HP Chromebooks, and you've got some hotspots, you're going to want to name each FRN individually to make sure that you know which is which. So your number 1 here, you're going to add your nickname. We're going to put 100 staff Dell laptops. And the second down is where you pick a drop down, and anything that's a Chromebook, a laptop, an iPad, that's going to be equipment. Any hotspots are going to be services. So that's the next window down. And then
a hotspot
nope.
Sorry. Yep.
Yep.
A hotspot is also equipment.
let me take that. Yes, I apologize. That is my fault. Thank you, ladies. Yes, the hotspot itself is the equipment. The service, monthly service, is the service. My apologies. So just as a quick, to dig into what Sue and Roxy corrected me on there, if you got hotspots that were under NC Connect grant or you already had them, that would be where you would apply for the service. If you don't have any hotspots and you want to get new ones, that's where you would choose equipment. So thank you, ladies. I apologize. So the next one is going to be FRN contract, and how are they going to be purchased? So, you know, nobody really, I don't think, has a tariff anymore, right? I don't believe so. So you'll pick if you have a contract or if it's not contracted at all. And then your service start date, which will be, I believe for the window 3 is 7/1/2022, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And
And then the ending is, so these dates obviously were from a little bit before of a training we had. Let me get,
6/30/23.
all right.
So you can have 12 months of service.
Yep. And the period that you can get that service runs through 12/31/23. And so if you don't start your service until November of this year, you can run till November of 23, but you cannot have more than 12 months. All right. And so here's where you do your service provider and your invoicing method. And your service provider is who you're getting the equipment or service from. So service provider is actually both for equipment or your service provider. And so number 1 is optional. Sue, did we have a lot of people who put their account number in there?
So like there's folks that are already have made purchases from like CDW or may already have a Verizon Wireless or US Cellular contract. So, you know, for their hotspots, so they may have an account number. This is really more for your clarification. If you have to buy new ones or if you've got 3 different carriers, things like that. You know, similar to, again, the account number that they always ask for on your Form 471 in E-rate. That was really a lot more based on when you had voice services. There's not too many people who have an account number to go out and buy, you know, network equipment every year. It's not a thing you do. You do it once every couple of years. So this really, it's absolutely optional. You don't know what to put there? Put the main number for the school district. Sanity says.
All right, and then if you're dealing with a big vendor or a vendor that you know already has a spin, much like an E-rate, that's what they use spins very frequently. And so you'll do a search for that vendor's, service provider's spin in where the box 2 is. Or you can search by their name, so your CDW, even, you know, North Carolina Technology Company, and you just click the little blue search button there. And you do not have to have necessarily a spin. So if you can't find it, you can choose here where it says unable to find your search provider. That's where you enter the service provider information. I mean, Amazon, you know, Charlotte Technology Services. And if you look, there's a blue star. That's what's required. So you'll need their name, address, zip code, city, and state. I would recommend probably putting their phone number just in case, but it's not required in this particular instance. And then the big thing is you must choose your invoicing method. So if you're going to do a SPI form, just like Jill had mentioned before, you're going to want to get that all worked out before you file to make sure that you've got your form ready. If not, you're going to do the BEAR or 472 method, which is where you pay for it up front. you file a bare reimbursement in the ECF portal to get your reimbursement and get your full money back. And so as a kind of a quick reminder too, ECF is 100% reimbursement. It's not necessarily based on your discount rate where you get 50% and DPI gives you 50%. This is a fully federally reimbursed 100%. The only thing where your discount rate for E-rate may come in is what the ladies talked about earlier, if they get down to where they're prioritizing and they run out of money.
If I may add a little piece there to the invoicing method.
Absolutely.
Do not hold up applying for funding if you're waiting for your service provider to get you a SPI letter. So that letter is going to say, you know, Verizon Wireless will bill SPI billing on behalf of, you know, Dare County School District for their ECF funding. You can go in and make a change after you have filed this form, you know, similar to doing a RAL in E-rate, so that you can change it to a SPI afterwards. Because in order to choose SPI here, as Adam mentioned, you need to upload that letter, and that letter can't just say, yeah, Verizon says they'll do SPI billing. No, it has to say Verizon will provide SPI billing on behalf of your school or school district or library, you know, for ECF funding.
All right. We can rock through to the next one. All right, so the next screen is going to be where this is where you talk about your narrative. So as we say here in red, be specific and thorough. Give a good explanation of what you're doing. We are providing 200 Chromebooks to students who would no longer have anything to take home. You want to make sure that you give enough information so that they can come back and say, okay, I see what they're doing. Another biggie here, upload your quote early in the beginning, get it uploaded. That way you've got it. And as a big note, the quote that you upload, make sure it is the quote that you order off of. So if you decide later, well, I might want to change from HP to Dell, you can. Yeah, you can, but believe me, it holds up the process. It's more complicated than you would think it would be. You're going to want, just like an E-rate, you're going to want to make sure that what you ask for is specific to, all right, what I asked for fits in the application, matches the quote, matches the invoice. You want everything to match. It makes things so much smoother. It's great. Golden gravy. There's your red continue button down in the bottom right, which sends us to the next screen. All right. Sue, is this where you come in, or I got a little bit more? I apologize.
Oh, you're still going, son.
Okay.
Have at it.
All right.
How are you?
I need to have it pulled up a slide numbers on the side. So now you've added your FRN. Now you've got to add your line items. So you've said, all right, I'm doing 200 Dell Chromebooks. Now you've got to actually put in 200 Dell Chromebooks. So that's where your FRN line item comes in.
Where's the happy mouse? Here it is.
There's the happy mouse.
All right, so now you've got your FRN put up there. Now you're going to click on the blue Add button, which adds your actual line item, and then your fabulous next screen. All right, this looks obviously a little bit different because this is where you're going to ask for your specific item that you're looking to apply for. First step, number one, what type of product is it? Chromebook is a laptop, just an FYI, so laptop is the same as Chromebook. iPad is tablet. So just to give a quick rundown on there. And Sue, this would be a good time to let them know where it says modem, router combined, or modem. Say I'm getting a Verizon Jetpack, which would I pick?
We did a lot of just modems. The modem router combined might be more in tune with the Khajiits, but again, most of the, I'm going to say 99.44% Ivory proof, went with just modems. It was
Okay.
those devices. There were a couple of applications for DSL service to mobile homes or trailer parks, where that is in fact a modem router.
All right. So yeah.
I'm not sure. Ask your vendor how to categorize it just to be sure.
And one thing too, I do want to note as well is you see a line here for taxes and reasonable charges. That does have to be on a separate line item. So this is our first step here where we're doing, say our laptops. So you have to do 2 separate line items for your laptops or your tablets, and then your taxes and reasonable charges. So, and Sue, is shipping, can that be considered a line item or just tax?
There are some reasonable charges. You'd need to look at the actual order shipping, so taxes and reasonable charges. So we're buying 230 Chromebooks. There's, that's 7.25% tax. There's installation and there's shipping. You would have 3 separate line items, one for the shipping or taxes, one for the shipping, and one for the installation. This gives the reviewer the ability to say, oh, yeah, no, we're not going to pay this long-haul freight and to palletize these 200 Chromebooks, if that's how they see it on your quote. If it's just a standard, drop ship kind of cost, that $185 or something, they will more than likely consider it a reasonable charge. It's not like you're running over to Best Buy to go pick it up.
Yep. And one thing I will say as well is if you do not put the line item for tax, it makes things much more difficult. Make sure if you're going to apply for your tax, make sure you get it in here when you're doing this application. If not, you have to file an appeal, and that's not the most fun thing you could ever do with your time. All right, so after you choose your product, number 2 here is you choose your make, Dell, HP, whatever your hotspot may be, Apple, your model. I would recommend, you've got 255 characters. I would try to be specific. For example, the Chromebook 11, 3100, or iPad 9.7, 2022. If you've got, for example, a model number that may be ABC 123, pop it in there. That way you know, because the reviewers, as they review your application, they're going to go and they're going to look this up. And they're going to say, all right, what's a Dell 3100? This school's saying $199. Okay, seems reasonable, cool. And they're going to go to the next. So try to be specific just as far as your model. That way, when you go back and look, because it may be a few months from when you fill out this application, it's just good to have so you can find it. And on your monthly costs or on your one-time costs. So if you're doing a service here, that's where you would do on your monthly recurring. So if you're doing $25 a month times 5 for your months of service, if you want 12 months, you'd put 12 months in there. Or you would do your one-time cost for 200 iPads, 200 Chromebooks, 50 hotspot, the physical hotspots themselves. And lady, Sue and Roxy, another good thing just to verify here, it's good to put zeros in where your monthly costs, whichever one you're not using.
Similar to your 471, yes.
Yep.
The system will not let you go further.
Correct.
If it's an item and it's a one-time, you need to have zeros and monthlies. And if it's a monthly, you need to have zeros and one-times.
And you need to be very careful which side you use. So service is always your recurring monthly, no matter which side of this sheet it's on. And then the one time is something you're going to pay for and then own. You pay for it one time and then own it. So make sure you put your cost on the right side of the sheet.
Yep. And then just make sure whatever you're not going to use, you zero out.
Correct.
All right. All right, so you're going to repeat these steps for each type of equipment you're ordering. And again, just like we talked about, make sure you include your taxes, installation, etc. And just as another quick thing, white glove service, for example, insurance on those Chromebooks, cases, as Jill talked about, those cannot be line items that you put in your application. Maybe $185 to ship them, drop ship, absolutely. But if you have, you can't put a line item for insurance or case. That's not anything that's covered. It's just what makes that device run. And once you're done, continue on and you fill out each one for each line item. And we'll head to the next slide.
I'm not sure if we mentioned with the $400 maximum.
Not.
Taxes.
There we go.
So Adam, run.
All right. So you can purchase, say you're going to buy laptops for your staff, 30 of them, and they're $659 a piece. You can file, and you file and say they're $659 a piece, and your application will be adjusted to the $400 max. So if you decide to buy an $899 computer, you'll get $400. So just keep that as your budgeting in mind. You're not going to get more than $400, and you're not going to get more than the tax on that $400. So if you're at 7 and we'll call it an even 7%, you're not going to get more than $428 for that device.
And I would recommend just applying for the 400, even though the device on the quote shows the $699 or $899 or anything like that. It just takes one step out of the review process, which brings in your potential to a committed, to an FCDL.
Yep. So, instead of putting $659 would have cost, just put your $400. That's your max. That's what it's going to be, and that saves the reviewer having to adjust it down for you. And so, this right here is where if you're ordering service 2, once you finish up with all your equipment, you'll need to add a new FRN, this time for your services. So that's kind of where we talked about you've got your FRN with an FRN line items, and you have to do one of each. So do an FRN, for your staff laptops or all your equipment, you do an FRN for your services since they have to be separate, and you're choosing a service type for each FRN.
I think the best thing to do would be an FRN for your student devices and an
Yep.
FRN for teacher devices. If you're doing hotspots, a separate FRN for this, and then another FRN for services. So you could have several FRNs if you're going to go through the whole shebang.
And just a quick add as well, sometimes it may seem a little cumbersome and say to yourself, right, well, I'm going to fill out this, I got to do this 4 times. But it can make things a lot easier, especially if you're a big district or if you're doing a big order or a big ask in this ECF. Say you're applying for 200 staff devices and 2,000 student Chromebooks and 200 hotspots. If you separate those out, if there's nothing wrong with your FRN for your hotspots, that's going to go through, cool. Okay, so it's easier to separate and know, all right, if you have an issue, it may not stop, even if it's in the application or in the BEAR process, etc. It's good to have everything separate. That way it can create a little bit less confusion if an issue may arise with your application or even reimbursement.
That's correct.
All right, so here's the big, we've got to read carefully, so we'll want to read carefully. Is this related to new construction, self-provision networks, or data casting? More than likely, this is going to be a no, unless you are doing a fiber build out to some students who absolutely need it. This is most likely 99.99%. You're going to choose no, and you're going to hit continue. All right, and this is again where your narrative is in your services. And so be specific. If we are requesting 45 Verizon hotspots for students who have no internet at home. This will be helpful in making sure that they can complete their homework, that kind of thing. So just make sure you're thorough and specific, just like we talked about before. And again, upload your quote right up here now. Do it, get her done. You've got it in there. And do your best to order off the quote that you upload.
Khajiit?
Yeah.
Khajiit bus routers?
Yeah.
So if you folks are, with school districts, I see Susan, you're here, you might be considering, having these routers for your buses. Mention that these are for your buses. Because if they go and see how much it costs for this router and they're thinking this is for your kids because you don't tell them that, yeah, they're going to question you. Some reviewers will act that naive, and other reviewers will be your grandma and contact you and say, hey, did you mean for these for your buses? Okay, let me just change this line item and separate them out, versus, your mother who will swat your butt and say, no, go to your room type thing.
And another thing, too, that is speaking of Khajiit or some of these, Khajiit, for example, you may get a 12-month service. Your quote may look a little funny, or, if you did 12 months of service times 100 hotspots, and it's not, the quote may look, you can say in your narrative, this is for 12 months of service. Your Verizon may come through with 1 month of service. Khajiit may be 6, 12. Make sure that you note that in your narrative. Make it easy for the reviewer to look at that quote and understand with that in combination with your narrative what it is that you're asking for. All right. No worries. That's all right. We're adding our line items now. So now we're back to adding our service line items, just like similar to how we did our equipment. So you're going to click the Add button. This is where the screen looks a tad different. So you're going to choose your type of connection first thing. So as you can see, it's a little blurry, but cable modem, DSL, etc., lease-lit fiber. More than likely, Sue, we're going to be a mobile broadbander, right? For your Verizon hotspots and everything, it's going to be a mobile broadband.
That's the world we lived in.
All right, mobile broadband. If you are one of the rare folks who does satellite, the first step I would say is to reach out to your E-rate coordinator so that we can talk about it and make sure that we know what we're doing, because again, we can help you. If you are a first-time filer and you're doing a satellite or you're doing a DSL or cable hardwire, let's have a chat too, so that way we can be involved as much as we can to help you guys to get this as smooth sailing as we can. So mobile broadband, if not, talk to us. Your next is going to be your broadband speed. I'm sorry, if the firewall is included is number 2. That is my fault. If you are getting it included, obviously yes. If you're not, choose no.
Only a basic firewall is eligible to be included, so anything other than that is not. So, and that's a simple yes or no, and you will be asked what type of firewall if you put a yes.
All right. And I will say, just as a question that may come up soon, Roxy, say I do decide to go with Verizon and I want the enhanced firewall and filtering, and basically you would put, what would you put, and can I pay for it on my own, I guess would be a question.
That needs to be a separate quote. It doesn't even need to be a part of ECF.
Perfect. So if you guys do decide, hey, I want to get these hotspots, but I want to have an enhanced firewall, I want to have all the protection and monitoring, oddly enough, the ECF program does not cover all those things that you may feel are necessary. I would get a separate quote from your service provider, like Roxy mentioned, and just pay for it separately and know that you're going to have to pay for it separately out of your own pocket if that is something you very much desire. And the next one's going to be your bandwidth download and upload speeds. Make sure the service provider that you are choosing gives you that info so that you can choose. And that goes along with box 4, which is whether you're doing it in megabytes or gigabytes. So just make sure that if you're doing 1 gigabyte, I mean, I don't think you're going to get a mobile connection that high, but you're probably going to be in the megabytes. Just make sure you don't choose gigabytes on accident. All right. 6 is going to be if there are any one-time costs. I skipped over 5, my apologies. The monthly recurring costs is going to be the same thing too, so make sure that you do it. If you're going to do 10 months, 6 months, 12 months, and you're going to choose how much it is, the cost, the quantity, how many months of service, and it will total your total recurring costs for you. So I'm going to do 15 hotspot service on 15 hotspots times 12 months at $25 a month. Boom, boom, and boom. There's your 3 lines. Zero out your one-time quantities, if you've got any. If you do, put them in. If you don't, for example, if you have a $15 activation fee that you've got to do for each line, you would obviously put that in for how many. That'll come up with your total cost, and then click the lovely blue Save button and the lovely blue Continue button. It will light up blue when you're ready.
Just a bad example there. Activation costs are a separate type under service, installation, activation, configuration. Sorry.
Okay, go back one. Don't be. Actually,
Sorry.
that's a good thing. That's actually, because I'm sure that that may happen. Can you go back just a couple, Rock? Thank you. So if you look
yeah,
here,
it's blurry.
it's a little blurry. So do that as a separate line item. Installation, activation. See, I knew there was a reason I chose that. Thanks, Sue.
You're welcome.
So you would choose installation, activation, and initial. It's the third one down. Then you would put no recurring costs. You'd zero all that left side out. Your right side, you would put $15 at however many quantity. So make sure that you add that as a separate line item if you do have any one-time costs that are associated. We may now trudge forward.
Okay, so you've gotten everything put into your 471. Let's take a look and review it to make sure.
And I just want to quick, here's Sue with the review.
I get the easy task today because
it rhymed and I had to go with it.
You did. So our sample here is just for some devices totaling out to the $312,000. We have the opportunity here to review the FCC Form 471. When we choose that option, it will go through the process similar to your 471 with E-rate. You'll get a hyperlink over on the left-hand side that you can actually click on it and actually see what all the information was that you entered looks like on this form. I'm not sure if we have a screen that shows what it looks like, but it is the same format as your E-rate 471. All right, so it's not something weird and bizarre that you have to figure out. When you look at the system, the application in the portal, it is a very different look and feel. I actually like it much more than the current 471 view in E-rate, but for the purpose of this exercise, you can click on that, you can review it once everything looks right. Again, Adam mentioned a couple things. For bandwidth, oops, I chose gigabyte. You can go back in and fix it to megabit. Whoops, I did, only $5. I meant to put $50. Those types of things. You can go back and edit the form just like your 471. So in this case, we'll continue to certification. And our certifications, there are a bunch of them. The typical usual, if you don't check them all, you cannot certify the application. What does this mean? It means you need to read them. We had some challenges with one of the certifications. I don't know that we ever got 100% clarification on it, but for the most part, you are authorizing that you're allowed to file this application on behalf of a school or library. You are going to follow all the rules of the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, and if you don't, grave our hotels in your future. You're certifying that this is, all the information on here is true and complete. I didn't go to the accountants of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe to make this work. The next set, this is a school. If you have challenges that come from a PIA reviewer, they're teaching me to say PIA, I say PIA, that you are, in fact, an elementary school, let us know. We will send that little notification that we send for E-rate as well. You're certifying that you're abiding by all your laws, state, local, tribal, regarding purchasing these services. Big concern, double dipping. You're not trying to get ESSER funds and ECF funds to buy the same widget, okay, one or the other. You're only looking for equipment or services that are on the eligible services list. That list is available on the Emergency Connectivity Fund website. The next set of certifications that you meet, or Oh, okay. That's what I was talking about, that you were using federal funding to, you're not trying to use ECF to reimburse for something else that you bought, during pandemic relief funding, any funding you got from, like I said, from ESSER or other federal fund programs, that the folks that you're seeking equipment or services for are, in fact, relevant students, teachers, library patrons. Your principal, unless that principal teaches classes, is not eligible for a new schwanky, iDevice or laptop. Your gym teacher, unless they can Zoom, kickball or some type of, phys ed program remotely, not eligible. School board members, not eligible. Relevant students or staff members or library patrons. And the last certification here is that this equipment is being purchased to be used for educational purposes. You're not going to have a yard sale and raise money to get a new scoreboard for the basketball court. Next one. Oh, geez, there are more. Okay. The whole maintaining of this equipment and service is actually maintaining your inventory. You are required for 3 years to maintain where that Chromebook went. The Chromebook was assigned to Johnny because he didn't have Chromebook. He graduates, returns that Chromebook to you. A new student comes into your school. You give that Chromebook to Josephine. Josephine carries on that Chromebook for the next 2 years. You know that Chromebook is no longer viable because the licensing is only good for 3. You have maintained the documentation of where that Chromebook went for 3 years. Hold on to that inventory sheet for 10 years, just like E-rate. You were complying with all the program rules. Otherwise, they'll come back and get the money back from you. You realize that you could be audited, and as we tell you all the time, as everything in E-rate is, keep all your documentation, keep it all electronically in some folder, so if you're hit by the proverbial bus, the next guy, they're not going to accept the excuse, well, Joe was hit by a proverbial bus. I don't know what they did. That won't fly. Okay, the school or the district will still be held accountable. Keep it on paper if you like, but what happens to paper? It gets shuffled around and winds up, in that murky basement. The last piece is that there's no kickbacks. That should be kind of obvious. We're all been dealing with E-rate long enough. Your Best Buy isn't giving you, a free refrigerator if you buy the 300 laptops from them. Next one. The last piece is your SIPA compliance. You are all E-rate applicants, so you all are SIPA compliant. I know we've got a new charter school here with us, and I'm sure they're working on their SIPA compliance. So when you get to that part of it, Silas, let us know. We'll help you answer that question appropriately. Then you hit certify.
And so, speaking of this question, when Windows 1 and 2 were out, most people had already been funded for funding year 21, and they had filed their 486.
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to play out with funding year 22? And most people haven't been funded yet, and therefore they haven't filed their 486.
That's what I was saying, because looking at the people that are, excuse me, on the list, like I know Silas has got the 2 charters. Mike Ramsey just deals with us. Susan Bocamp's Wan, I think, went through. So
Chris Whitlock just went through. Charlotte Lab just went through. Fontana Libraries on here, and they just went through.
So really it's just going to come down to the timing of when that comes about. I mean, the 479 obviously can be filed on behalf of all our NCREN membership, which also qualifies that answer.
Yes. if they're on the app that is funded.
Yes.
So, yes.
So that's what I'm saying. When you get to this, if you're unsure because you haven't had a 471 or an FCBL for funding year 22 yet, reach out to us and we'll see where you are on our applications for your NCREN provided ISP service. And then they'll be taken care of by quick send us over your 479. You can check off the yes, and then you can certify.
And everyone has a 479 due to us before June 1st. So if you haven't sent that in, send it in now. And if you were funded on Wave 1, get your 486 done. I think we all sent out reminders about the 486. Go ahead and check that off if you're looking at applying in Wave Window 3. So that will take care of this question.
Yep.
Let's move on.
So the last statement is that if you've lied about any of this, it won't be pretty. So you need to say yes. You have to acknowledge that you read this little last warning. Happy mouse. All right. So you file your 471. You're all happy. What happens next? Same thing that happens in E-rate. You may get a peer review. These reviews will be sent via email. It'll be from the Emergency Connectivity Fund Administration, which is the same. It's not the same folks, but it's a similar group of folks. There is a tab, it's a communications tab that's available in the ECF portal where you will actually respond versus the inquiry response that you see in your 471s and E-rate. While there isn't an absolute, you have 14 days to answer, 7 days to answer, sometimes they will put, if we don't hear back from you within 7 days, we'll consider this matter closed. That's mostly with the post-commitment change requests, however. PIA is pretty quick. Again, we will all be notified as your state coordinators that there is this pending review, except for our library friend here. Sorry, we don't necessarily know what happens on your applications. You'll be asked for your quotes. They may ask for clarification on what this part number is. All these vendors that have not done business with E-rate in the past, it's one thing that they just send you a quote for, a J16R3/4. Well, that's nice. If I can't Google it, neither can the PIA reviewer. So if they ask for your quotes, you got to upload your quotes. You should just upload them anyway, take that step out of the mix. Save your PDF of your 471 and all the rest of your ECF documentation. We tell you this ad nauseum about E-rate filing. It's no different for ECF. When you do order this equipment, you might need it anyway. You might have, rising middle schoolers into high school for which they need a different piece of equipment that they do take home, and this is where you're going to use your ECF funding. So you may order this equipment. You cannot receive this equipment before July 1st. Okay, you can order it. You cannot receive it before then. So the school may go ahead, buy these, 350 laptops for those students or Chromebooks. Make sure that that invoice that you get matches the quote that you uploaded. So we'll go back to that Chromebook. It might be $279. It's bundled with a Google license. It might be, then there's, whatever installation, shipping, taxes. If your invoice now comes through and shows that Google license of $32 set off to the side with the Chromebook being $247, you will get reimbursed for the $247. You will not get reimbursed for that $32, even though your original application was for $279. The sum of both of those items. It has to match. CDW has been doing a good job of that. Amazon, not so much. Yes, we had people buy from Amazon and Staples and Best Buy, from Joe's Computer Shop. So just be cognizant of that, okay? Next. something I should have probably mentioned before we got to this screen, but that's fine. Adam mentioned it, your SAN.gov registration, your FCCRN, your EIN. These are all acronyms and phrases and buzzwords that are associated with your being registered with the federal government as being, and I'm just going to say this way, a public school or library. If your EIN is due to expire, or your FCCRN or your SANS.gov registration is due to expire during the school year, keep an eye out, because this money is going to be an electronic funds transfer directly from the U.S. Treasurer. This isn't coming from the FCC. This isn't coming from USAC. And Mike is not sending you a check from his personal account. This is coming from the U.S. Treasury. So if they don't recognize your EIN, it's off a digit. They don't recognize your DUNS number. Oh, that's your sister school, or that's your middle school. That's not the school district. Things like that. Get those things straightened out. I'm going to say 70% of the PIA reviews that came through were about DUNS EIN mismatches. You know, because y'all have been filing SPI billing for years, because that's the way it's done in North Carolina. You haven't had to do bearer processing. If you're doing bearer now, this will be the first that you're hit with this information. You'll also need to have your 498 filed. Talk to us about that. We will help you through that process. It's just about your banking information. So after you're done with your invoices, as I mentioned, make sure what you ordered matches your quote, matches your invoice, must have the shipping or delivery date on there. Save your packing slips and any shipping emails or documentation. Adam has shared with us that, I think it's CGW, they actually have an online portal that the sales rep can go in and give you a print screen that shows your order number was, you know, for X product was delivered on X date. For your 472, you will need to upload the invoice shipping documentation that has the proof of delivery. If you are, you know, that you already paid it, because this might happen, that you ordered the stuff in July, it came in July, you had the budget available still, you paid it in August, you finally get your, you know, you might get your FCGL at some point in July, you file for your reimbursement, you can, you know, show, here, I paid it, here's my canceled check, so that, it, you know, all your eggs are, you know, together, the ducks are in a row. There is the ability to file for reimbursement prior to paying for the equipment. I don't recommend it. Next. Ta-da! And we're cut off, literally.
Where'd it go?
I don't know, but the little logo is cut off there.
Sure is.
That's
all
nice.
right. So, we'll have to fix that. I do not see any questions in the chat, so I'll take just a minute. If anyone has a question, you may put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask it.
Hey, Chris, what do you got?
Maybe typing.
There it is. Okay. Well,
Okay, so Silas asked, how might I go about determining what needs are unmet for students at a new school?
So, Silas, with that school, if the education plan is that every student has a device that they can take home with them for learning, and you know that the area you're in is an impoverished area, you can use that demographic information, as it is a new school, so you haven't had the opportunity to send out, you know, the inquiries. and use that as saying, yes, we are an impoverished school district at a 90%, NSLP based on the demographics of the area, to determine that these 130 students entering our new school will all need these devices. Other options that we've heard from our peers around the country is that this school requires specific applications running on this device. And not too many parents are going to give up their kid's new laptop that they also, play Fortnite on or something to let you install these other services via other applications. So yes, you can use that for this school. And we're absolutely happy to talk to you about this offline, specific to what the needs of your school is. As I know it's a new school, and I know it's going to be a little challenging, but it sounds like we're telling you can't have a one-on-one program. But if all of your students need this device in order to, get the education that the charter has applied to, get through, then absolutely, it's an unmet need, as long as the device goes home and doesn't sit in a laptop cart or your office.
Okay, next question. Can I go ahead and order equipment now with funds that are currently available? I just can't receive the equipment till after July 1st.
So it's kind of early in the process. I mean, as long as the quote doesn't say, the quote expires at, on June 30th or, before this window starts, if there's any way that you could potentially wait until at least after this window closes. I understand supply chain, I understand vendors telling you, hey, listen, I've got these 1,000 devices, but I don't know how long they'll last.
Then can I get, then if I order, then I could pay or get reimbursed if I get approved?
Yeah, so basically, we didn't share the chart. It might be something we should find and throw out there real quick. It's on our webpage. Order the equipment. Equipment arrives after July 1st. It cannot arrive before. Invoice for equipment sometime mid-July. You get your FCGL, shortly thereafter, or, even before that. I know that they opened this window when they did in hopes of getting everything in place before the school year starts. And if you get approved, yes, then you could submit your invoice that matches your quote, that matches the equipment you received for reimbursement.
And if I may add a quick little bit too, Chris, so you should, for example, if you can't get this equipment in until after July 1st, you should know, hopefully, before July 1st or, in between when the window closes in July 1st, whether you're approved or not. Of course, that's not guaranteed or not. But another thing, too, is you can't file, for example, if you're doing a BEAR reimbursement, you can't file for the BEAR reimbursement in the portal until those items arrive on your campus. And so that's just something to note for not only you, but for everyone. They have to have arrived on your campus before you can submit for reimbursement. So just think about that as far as your budgets. If you're making a big purchase, say $100,000, most things are on a net 30 term, but you may not see that money in your bank account in 30 days, even if you apply for the BEAR reimbursement the day after they come onto your campus.
Yeah, we have noticed it does take quite some time. Again, don't want to scare people away from this valuable funding opportunity, but it can, and it has taken up to 12 weeks from the BEAR application until the monies have hit, your bank account. And for the longest time, we were unable to see any of those transactions. We had no vision into, oh, they filed a BEAR yesterday. Okay, cool. Oh, there was a communication. They have a question. All right, let's help them make sure they get that answered. we had no idea up until literally last week that what these actual timelines were looking like. Without reaching out to our schools, that we found out, oh, there was a disbursement made through a back door that we had. Hey, listen, can you tell us when you filed your bear? How, you know, what type of questions were being asked, and how long was it then until you got your money? So it can take some time. Susan had asked us a question that was mixed in the middle of all that there.
I was going to read this next. Yep.
Okay,
So here's the next question from Susan. So if the device cost $800, can you use the $400 from ECF funds and pay the balance with ESSER funds?
Well, Rox, is Mike still on the call? I don't know if he wants to hear what we've been telling people. So
technically, you can, yes.
Yep. You
because
cannot take.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sue. Go ahead.
You can't really take the account that has the ESSER fund and pay the whole bill, and then get your ECF money back. You kind of have to tell the vendor, yep, here's your $400 for each of these devices. We're still waiting for ECF money. And when you get that, pay it. Unless it's, you know, hitting separate accounts. I don't know how that whole ESSER account is tagged. You know, if it's just the New Hanover County Schools slush account that happens to have $1 million in ESSER money. And then when the ECF funds comes, it goes into that same slush account. You do have to keep an accurate accounting. So that's the only thing. I know you have to keep it for both. So it could look a little bit awry if you get that, you know, $800,000 bill for Chromebooks for your students, and you write it out of the ESSER account, and your ECF money hasn't come in yet. You know, so just a thing to watch. I would definitely talk to your finance people before, you know, jumping on that one.
Okay, the next question. Devices only qualify if they go home every day, not just when school is going to be closed. Yes, that is correct. Remember, ECF is not just about COVID and the shutdown. ECF is about closing the homework gap. So these devices need to go home with your children for remote learning. So it's not just for snow days. It's not just for when you do have to be closed for whatever reason. It's for kids to use when they need to be online for learning. And remote means when they're not on campus. So they do need to go home with the children, and not just when school is closed.
The biggest thing the auditors have told us for the most part is they're going to task you, Mr. CTO, Mrs. CTO. You bought 1,000 Chromebooks. You said it was given out to student, you know, 1235 in second grade, 1237 in third grade, 12, you know, all the way down the line. Okay, cool. We see that student 1235, you know, left school that school year. Where'd it go from there? You have to know where it went. You can't say, oh yeah, it's in Chromebook cart 4. That won't fly. You can't say that I was holding on to it as a spare. You know, the idea is that these are assigned to your students. You know, Johnny comes into class with his Chromebook in his backpack, not comes into class and gets a Chromebook out of the laptop cart and uses it for the day and puts it back in the laptop cart.
Yeah. And, you know, we've heard everything. We've heard, well, we don't send devices home. We've heard, well, we don't do homework anymore because kids don't do it. And that's fine. That's totally okay. If those are your decisions by your school or your school district, then this is not the program for you, because those are the rules set forth by the federal government and what these funds are for. And if you have other rules that you live by and policies and procedures, meaning either you don't have homework, so you don't have remote learning unless you're closed via COVID or whatever, or you don't do homework because that's your school's policy, then that's totally cool. That's the way you do school, and that's fine. But you need to understand then that this is not your funding program. You need to find other ways to fund devices that you keep at school and that you use at school, because ECF is not for you. This is a different funding program for devices that go home with children, for those who use learning management systems, who do their work digitally, you know, who live in a different environment than what you may live in. So you have to, you know, look at how you do school and decide if this is your funding source. Okay, do we have other questions? If you'll please put them in the chat. All right then, well, I don't see any. So if you individually would reach out to your coordinator if you have additional questions, just make sure you get your 471 file before the deadline. And if you need help with anything, you know we're here to help you, so please reach out. And we do appreciate you being with us this afternoon. I will post the recording by sometime tomorrow after it goes through all of its changeovers and I get it posted. And we will put the slide deck up as well. And thank you for attending. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you guys very much.
Be well all.